If you want desert, we got deserts here.
Time to wrap up. See what I did there? The vinyl wrapped AK Interactives M1008 truck. Plug it in and create a display base for it, showcasing some techniques I've never used before. So lock in and let's get a start.
Dry desert air.
Like with most of my recent bases, I'm using a slab of XPS foam cut in a circle using my hot wire cutter. Another way to do this cut would be to use a hole saw, but you would be limited to the size you could go with that. Displays with angled or elevations in the terrain tend to make for a more interesting piece, generally speaking of course, as it gives the display a degree of drama and dynamic. I set about building those layers using scrap polystyrene, but before doing that, cut a hole in the bottom of the foam for the battery pack to sit. As you may recall, I'd wired the model with headlights, so the power had to come from somewhere. From under the base seemed to be the most logical solution. After mapping out the basic positions of the terrain and the truck, I started layering up the terrain elements. This was just setting the topography, and once all glued in place with PVA glue, I could refine the pieces with a handheld hot wire cutter. I'd been dying to try moulded plaster rocks for an age. The moulds are tools that the railroad guys regularly use to great effect. I made a few of them off screen as my tester and will dedicate a video to the plaster rocks at a later date, but I'm setting about piecing them around the display and how they may work in with this base. Firstly though, I apply the foundation layer using sculptor mould. It's a paper mache style of product that requires to be mixed in with water. Now this will blend and smooth the terrain, and it's really easy to use. The plaster rocks are seated around the groundwork now and help to create a complexity and a different dynamic to that mountainside. You'll also notice here that the feed wire from the battery pack has been pushed through that groundwork. I've shared the way I dress my bases many times before here on the channel, but for those of you who haven't seen it, I'll go over it quickly again. All it is styrene sheet around 0.8 of a mil, maybe a mil thick, with a mounting film to the rear. Now the mounting film is like a double-sided tape without the thickness of the tape. And the front of that styrene is coated in a satin black self-adhesive vinyl. Once the circumference has been determined, I can cut that styrene sheet and proceed to wrap it around the foam just to tidy up the look. Any gaps where the styrene didn't quite meet the foam can be easily filled with another round of the sculptor mould, and once it hardens, which is in around 2 hours time, I can lay my actual covering for that terrain using AK Terrains Paste Sandy Desert. This is an acrylic textured paste and is applied to the base using an artist's palette knife and is applied similar to icing a cake. Because the paste is water-based, I use a combination of old brushes with the bristles moistened with water. The brushes can be used to remove any of the lines that palette knife had made and soften the finish so it looks more natural. I'm careful to avoid the plaster rocks because, as you'll soon see, I want to use the properties of the plaster to enhance my painting. The other thing softening the finish with the brushes and water is it keeps the paste wetter for longer, and while it was still wet, I sprinkled various grades of dirt and rocks to create greater textures in that groundwork, which the paste should hold more or less once dry. But just to make sure the pebbles would hold in place, a sand and ballast freeze was applied and set aside to dry. Now that sand and ballast freeze is an acrylic product, so it shouldn't react with the Terrains paste, which is an acrylic product as well. In around 24 hours time, the paste has set and I need to integrate the colour of those rocks and grit, and I'll use a dark yellow and a buff to do that. I begin with dark yellow and gradually add buff to the mix. I am using the peaks and undulations to tell me where I should be painting here. Essentially, the higher the peak, the lighter I will paint it. By varying the colour like that, I'm able to create more depth and dimension in an already irregular surface. Then I came to the point I was really looking forward to trying the most, and it was painting those plaster rocks. I'd seen a few tutorials online from the railroad modelers, and they paint these with acrylic washes. I'm using graphite and black to create a highly diluted mix of graphite and paint it over the rocks. Varying the coverage and adding multiple layers creates a tonal variation even with just the one colour. I moved to the black then and worked that around any crevices or cracks. The porous nature of the plaster allows the paint to absorb and stain and gives it an incredibly realistic finish. I was so happy with how this came out. I will 100% be expanding on this technique in the future. Small pre-made tufts of grass start to bring a softer nature to the terrain, and they were held in place with a touch of PVA glue. Other types of vegetation are included as a mix will help create realism and plausibility into this piece. All of these pieces are commercially available and can be found at most hobby or railroad outlets. I'd used Middle East soil pigments over the model, so it would only make sense to apply that tone and texture over this groundwork as well. Like I did for the highlights, I focused them to the higher undulation sections in that terrain. You can see the variation in the finish and the colour it's adding to it. To help hold those pigments to the terrain, I use a wash for dark yellow around some of those bigger rock clusters, so that will not only hold them in place, but it will help bring some definition to those rocks. The masking from the base can then be removed and the wiring from the battery pack connected to the wiring in the vehicle. A quick test confirms the lighting is functional, which is something I was a little bit concerned with, given the painting and weathering that had been applied and the potential to corrupt these connections. With the truck glued in place, I add a little more variation to the groundwork by picking out various pebbles and rocks with Africa dust effects. I like to create a story with my displays or have an obscure double meaning, so using Meshy AI to create a lizard, to print on my Hallet X1 3D printer, I printed another player for the scene. Now I've uploaded this STL on Patreon for my killer kangaroos to download and use where they see fit. Patreon is a place where I share behind the scenes glimpses and you get additional content depending on your tier, but it is also a great place to get in touch with me and connect with a like-minded community. Check it out if you're looking to improve your own modeling. We'd love to see you there. With a lizard in place and a small vinyl cut title added, Desert Defender was ready for inspection. This project was a lot of firsts for me, adding the headlights, creating and painting plaster rocks, designing and printing the lizard, but the biggest thrill was playing with the vinyl wrap and seeing what I could do with that. I took a lot of leaps of faith along the way, but seeing it finished on this display base, I have to say it's genuinely satisfying. I wouldn't regard this as competition worthy in any shape or form, but like I said in the last video, once I surrendered to imperfection and lent into just enjoying the experimentation and discovery of this build, it took on a new purpose and in turn a new enjoyment with it. But what do you guys think? It looks completely different on a base, doesn't it? Let me know if you have any feedback or questions in the comments down below, and I'll promise you that I will personally answer every question. Coming up next week, let's have a bit of fun here and see who can guess. I beat the air, but never bruise it. What do you reckon? Anyway, thanks again for allowing me on your screens. I will never ever take that for granted. And remember, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Share it with your family and share it with your friends, and let's be proud of what we do. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
takes me back with you to passionate desert scenes.